All right. I have 4 a.m. my time, so that means it's 4 p.m. in Shenzhen. Welcome to the MANET work group. We have our 3 chairs online. Ronald Infelt, Donald Eastlake, and myself, Don Fedek. This session is being recorded. And I'd like to point out the note well. You should all be familiar with this, but if it's your first time, you agree to these, the IETF process and these policies. And its reminder, this slide and the actual text for this version is in the references here. And it outlines the conduct and contributions and the detailed process, etc. So please take note. This session is being recorded. So meeting tips for anybody that's in the room, please sign into the data tracker so your attendance will be recorded. Use the Meeto Lite tool to join the queue or show hands, and keep your audio off if you're not using the on-site version. Remote participants, make sure your audio and video are off unless you're chairing. Use a headset, please. All participants state your name each time you begin speaking at the queue. These are the resources for MANET in Shenzhen. We have the agenda, these slides, the meeting information, and if you need any technical assistance, please see the meeting issues. Resources for this work group session. Again, there's a bunch of hyperlinks here. So the materials in PDF, etc., the chat and the audio. If we could get somebody to take notes, that would be great. I don't know how well the transcription is working, and I've been on some meetings where there's been some dropouts, so any notes would be appreciated. So the agenda today, we have the chairs, administrivia, and again, note takers. We'll go through the document status, and then we have a presentation from Fred Templin on the 2 drafts. He has the MANET gaps draft and a MANET INET Omni draft. And then we have a short presentation on the responsive use of MANET by Christopher Dearlove. And then we have any discussion and wrap up in the chairs, by the chairs. So, document status. Do you want me to talk through these, or do you want to say anything, Ronald?
What I would want to say as a former document shepherd for these documents is that I would want to thank everybody involved for their patience and perseverance. It was a long road to finally get these things published. But I want to say thank you to, I have to say, the surviving authors. Unfortunately, our AD, all the reviewers, and the people from the RC Production Center who've been very good in ironing out the last few issues. So thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, and one other thing, I hope to see some implementations of this at one day. Will try to work on that myself.
Yeah, I'm aware that some of these aspects are being worked on. I've seen some implementations of them. And we have 3 active drafts, 3 short drafts: the MANET channel utilization, the radio band, radio quality. They've gone through the last call. They've just been updated, so please have a look and make sure that there's no more comments. I'm going to issue a IPR call for each draft because I didn't see any record of that. It's just to formally make sure that we have a record of that. Some comments are still being addressed. I don't know if you've had a chance, Ronald, to look at the latest ones to see if your comments have been addressed. But if they have or have not, please resolve that on the mailing list. And we'll proceed to submitting them to the IASG after the IPR calls. And and any comments are addressed. So in the next few weeks, we should be able to close on those. Anything else you want to say, Ronald, on these?
No, I did not have a chance to look at the latest versions because I understand Henning posted those this morning.
Okay.
But I will.
Okay. Okay, and the related individual drafts, we've got the draft template MANET INET, which is that's the GAPS draft, I believe, that talks about MANET routing between MANETs and talks about the situation and any gaps that are there. And then a proposal draft on MANET Omni. These are still individual drafts. We'll have some discussion of that, and they're going to be presented this session. Please, if you have any comments, review these drafts and make sure that if you have any comments, take that to the list. And then we have the draft Dear Love MANET OLS RV2 responsive. We're going to have a brief presentation on that today. And we have a draft Perkins MANET AOD V2, which talks about implementation status that's been presented at IETF 123. Another one for all these drafts, please review and comment on the mailing list. And not materialized yet. Ronald, this is your slide. Do you want to talk to this?
Yes. So at IETF 124, the Montreal meeting, I sort of announced that there was this work on the horizon. I was then hoping that we would have an initial draft for this MANET awareness model, which is basically a Yang model that gathers information, for instance, from DLAP, but also from whatever routing protocol you're running on a MANET router, and make this this information available to hosts, for instance, who can then, for instance, adapt the traffic they will be sending to the status of the network. Apparently, this is taking a bit longer, so we're hoping to have a draft now before the next meeting. And then, I represented an older presentation on issues that have been discovered with the basic DLAP document, RFC 8175. And we had some discussion on whether we should do an update document for 8175 or do a complete 8175 BIS document. We did a poll at the Montreal meeting to see who was interested on working on this, and unfortunately I was the only one who raised my hand. And then I said, okay, then it's going to be a slow process, and that turns out to be true. So it could be a while before I will be able to share something on that with the group.
Okay. So that's it for the chair's slides. If we could bring up Fred. Is Fred online? Do we have Fred?
I'm here, yes.
Okay. Could we bring up Fred's deck?
Okay, do I have control now? Okay. All right. This is a presentation about MANET internetworking, and you can see the drafts there that are in question in this presentation. I'm going to be jointly sharing this presentation with Dr. Daniel Jacob-Eisen, who's also online right now. So we'll be switching over midway between the talk, and we'll each give our portions of the talk. So a little bit of MANET background. MANET concerns a multi-hop communications capability between often low-end mobile nodes operating on a common multi-access packet radio medium within a coverage range locality. Community interest in MANET began in the late 20th century with programs like DARPA Packet Radio, Army Task Force 21, DARPA GLOMO, and others. Then in the late 1990s and early 2000s, there was intense work on the first MANET optimized routing protocols in the IETF, and it produced two proactive protocols, OLSR and TBRPF, and two reactive protocols, AODV and DSR. So beginning in year 2000, I contributed to the TBRPF RFC, and also was the lead author on the ISOTAP RFC, which ISOTAP is a non-broadcast multiple access virtual interface type for V6 overlays. So at that time, we took the TBRPF protocol and the ISOTAP protocol and flew them on Yamaha RMX helicopters, some of the very first MANET internetworking vehicular communications demonstrations. Since those early years, IETF has since developed other MANET routing protocols. And what we want to look at now is called MANET internetworking, which is routing protocol agnostic, and it seeks to bridge disjoint local MANET clouds over the internet as an overlay over the internet. So I'd like to now turn over to my co-presenter, Dr. John Jacob Bison, who's going to be handling the next charts. Can we get the chart deck over to him?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We hear you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Looks like I have control of the slide deck here. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And I wanted to just start with the first slide here that is a slide that I used in the previous Montreal presentation to kind of just level set on this particular use case. So I presented a few use cases last time. I want to focus in on this particular use case of the UAV swarm. And as you've seen kind of illustrated in this slide, what Fred was just discussing, the idea that you could have a couple of local MANETs with local routing. And perhaps there's a means to have MANET to MANET interconnection, but we might find it more efficient and more reliable to route and form inter-MANET connections through this overlay that also utilizes the internet as a backbone. And so, as an alternative to, I can't count quickly here, maybe 5 hops I've shown on this slide, and having to successfully achieve communications across those 5 hops, we might instead use a interconnection with a base station, which provides access then to the internet and on the left-hand side, and then interconnects with this MANET in another location closer to the end destination. And so the ability to have support for protocols that allow for this interconnection to happen seamlessly are of interest. And there's a number of scenarios then that we've been thinking about that motivate some of the discussion today, and I'm going to step through a couple of those, a couple of illustrations that give some kind of pictorial example of what this might look like. But overall, looking for the ability to robustly handle mobility and topology changes, because in the UAV swarm context in particular, we expect these networks to be highly dynamic and not just move, not just have mobility changes, but also MANETs that may be originally just supporting local routing may encounter each other. So here's an example of, we have 2 local regions initially, and so MANET routing is taking place within those local regions. There is potentially also interconnect to external networks to potentially reach the internet as a backbone from these. So, in the left-hand example here, there's an interconnect with a base station. In the right-hand example, non-terrestrial network, NTN interconnection. And the objective here would be to establish MANET local routing and border gateway protocols such that dynamic MANET to MANET routing or MANET to internet working would be supported. And if we just flip through the illustration here, the next slide here shows, okay, the MANET on the left has shifted. We now have the possibility for interconnections. So one of these MANET nodes that was previously just a typical device in the network potentially could be elevated to serve a gateway purpose. And in this case, we would want to make sure that we propagate host routes that existed within these local regions across the new interconnection, and make sure that they are available and discovered as a result of this new interconnection. In addition, if the base station and the non-terrestrial network satellite both provide internet interconnection, that can again provide a means of routing between the 2 MANETs, as I kind of showed in the first slide. And then finally, if these MANETs continue to persist in the same area, then we would be interested in a local region merger. And so to have protocols that seamlessly support the merger of local MANET regions into a larger region would also be of interest. And again, if interconnection through the internet provides more reliable service across the MANET, perhaps that's still a route that's used. But the ability to kind of step through these different scenarios in a seamless way is part of the focus of what now Fred's going to walk through kind of from a technical solution standpoint. So this was just kind of to set some motivation and some scenarios that would use these types of protocol modifications. Fred, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Can I get slide control back again? Thank you. So now the subject of MANET internetworking, although we're presenting this as if it's kind of a new idea or new subject, it really got started 26 years ago when we had those first experimentations with TBRPF and ISOTAP in the helicopters that we were flying at those times. So this has been developing for the past 26 years. So the idea is that the global internet's going to provide transit overlay bridging between distinct MANET local routing regions. You can see the diagram. You have MANET 1 on the left, MANET 2 on the right, and the internet as a transit network that bridges the two clouds over an overlay over the internet. So the MANET routers are going to assign multi-link local addresses to an overlay multi-link network interface, an Omni interface. These addresses are locally routable in the local MANET local routing regions, and they're also globally routable over the OmniLink limited domain, which is again a virtual overlay over the internet. And that means that the MLAs must be assured globally unique, because you can never tell which two MANETs are going to be joined over the internet at any given point in time. So for the MLAs, the address choice that we're using for that is RFC 9374 IPv6 addresses, which include security registry information in the routing prefix and a cryptographic interface identifier. So this provides not only assured unique, but also cryptographically oriented addresses that can be used to authenticate nodes that are authorized to use the addresses. So for MLA routing in the MANET local routing regions, the MANET routers run a MANET routing protocol to exchange MLA host routes like IPv6/128s for multi-hop forwarding in the local routing region. And the MLA host routes in the MANET local routing region A are mutually exclusive for those in the local routing region B. But as Daniel's charts showed, if regions A and B ever merge, both become aware of the union of all MLA host routes and now combine larger local routing region. But we can also use clustering internally within the merged local routing regions to limit the extent of MLA host route propagation. So the idea is that you want to have as few routes as possible in your MANET local routing region, but you want to be able to address as many nodes as possible. And this is where the clustering can come into play. So the MLAs in the OmniLink virtual overlay. The OmniLink virtual overlay provides a bridging service to connect disjoint MANET local routing regions over the global internet, as we saw in the earlier diagrams and use cases. The overlay must support routing between MLAs in the local routing region A and those in the local routing region B for all regions A and B that connect to the OmniLink. What that means is that the MLA host routes must be propagated over the OmniLink virtual overlay interdomain routing protocol. And for the overlay interdomain routing protocol, we're using BGP to propagate host routes. The result is we have a MANET of MANETs with BGP as a MANET routing protocol, which is maybe surprising to some people. BGP scaling limits suggest that this could scale to maybe 10 to the 6 or 10 to the 7 routes. But what would happen if we needed to scale to larger than that still? So say on the order of the scale of the number of nodes in the internet. So for OmniLink virtual overlay scaling, the OmniLink that may join very large numbers of disjoint MANET local routing regions, again on the order of the scale of the internet itself. The BGP interdomain routing service alone would be challenged to deal with so many MLA host routes plus the degree of mobility related churn, which would be too much for BGP to carry. So we're looking at the possibility of having the BGP interdomain service augmented with DNS next hop resolution lookup capability They can address the scaling limitations both in terms of the numbers of host routes and the ability to churn. So in other words, you get a address that you don't have a route for, you look in the DNS. If you find the DNS has a server address associated with the address in question, the reverse DNS says, then you can go to that server and find out where the host is located. Next steps. We want to ask for adoption of the 3 drafts that you see listed here. The first draft is, as was said earlier by the chairs, is the problem statement and gap analysis draft, MANET INET. The second draft is the MANET INET Omni, which is assuming the Omni and Arrow solutions as solution proposals. And the third is the draft that specifies the MANET multi-link local address format. And that's where I'll stop. I think I got a backup chart, but that's all I wanted to present for today. Can we have some discussion about these next steps?
Yes, thank you, Fred, for the presentation. With regard to the first draft, I would like to see a few more reviews and comments on the mailing list, but then, I think we could at some point adopt it as a working group item if there's agreement that there is a problem to solve there, and there is a gap that we should address. With regard to the other 2 drafts, I think we first have to take a close look again at our current charter to see whether we can actually work on those. And especially the last of these 3 has a 6-man marking. Would that one have to be adopted by 6 men? I wonder.
I'll just offer that we can change that designation to MANET if there's interest to have it come into the MANET domain. Okay,
yeah, but we would have to at least coordinate with 6 men then, I would think. I don't know how closely you follow this, but we had some discussions about rechartering and what would be in scope of the new charter. And our area director said last year at IETF 123 at the Madrid meeting that he was not going to let us recharter because he felt that there was not enough activity in the group for the moment to go through the whole process of rechartering, which he found to be quite a burden on himself and the rest of the IESG. So we would first have to prove that there was still some energy left in the group, and then we could discuss rechartering. So we would have to discuss with him whether anything beyond the requirements and the gap analysis draft would be something we could work on. But let's start with draft template MANET INET and see if we can get that adopted as a working group item. And in the meanwhile, we will talk to Jim Keyshart about what to do with the other 2, and if we can get them in scope. That's my opinion, but maybe one of my co-chairs or anyone in the audience has a different view on this.
Yeah. So I'm in the queue, so I'll speak now. So I read through this draft, and I thank you for the draft. Uh, and I think uh, it's definitely a good start. I didn't know if it was the only solution, and I think the draft could do pointing out some other solutions and the pros and cons, the drawbacks. I have to admit I used the AI and I asked it that question, and it did point out like three models. The your model, Omni, was one of them. The host identity protocol as another attempt that had been made to connect MANETs was another one. Lisp, which I did, we've talked about this briefly before. Lisp takes a different tact slightly of solving, could be applied to solving the problem. And then there is a number of other, it pointed out a number of other possibilities that, workarounds that, don't work today, but they've been applied in the past, such as NAT and tunnels and VPN overlays and etc. So I think rounding out the gap analysis to at least mention, some of the historical, if you've got that information, the other types of things that didn't get really wide adoption in the past, and why you think Omni, what the attributes that it has. I think that would be beneficial all around to completing the draft.
Okay, thank you.
Christopher?
Yes, I confess to not having read the draft. I can say that we were looking at scenarios like this. I'm not quite sure when, sort of the same order of 20 odd years ago. And it was one of the motivations changes between OLSR and OLSR v2 was that to support the internal MANET side of that, but we never, of course, approached how the external world feeds that information into the required gateway things. The gateway messages are there, you have to feed them, or pulling the information back out. We experimented with using OLSR as an overlay network for OLSR, but that's not a sensible suggestion. The scaling app that Fred mentioned would make that impractical. But yes, so yes, it's definitely a requirement that people have looked at for many years. Whether this is the right solution, I confess not having read the draft.
Thank you.
Ronald, you're on mute.
Thank you. So I put myself in the queue with a more technical question. You mentioned BGP. I also confess to not having read the INET Omni draft, but BGP operates on AS numbers. So yes. Is a MANET an AS in that regard?
So if you're familiar with the 5G terminology, you've heard the term G node B before?
Yeah.
The G node B is the gateway for 5G. That G node B would have an autonomous system number. And the G node B would have the list of all MLAs, list of all host routes that are associated with MANETs that are attached to that G-node B. And then the G-node B would connect to a BGP gateway and use its autonomous system to then inject its host routes into the interdomain BGP. So that's where the autonomous system comes into place at the G-node B.
Okay. But what if, say, a MANET has two entrance points or exit points, two gateways to the outside world, and then at some point the MANET gets segmented with one of the gateways remaining in each of the segments. Then you have a sort of a dynamic extra MANET thing. We looked into something similar, and then we came to the conclusion that we should have some equivalent of AS numbers that was dynamic, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do understand what you're saying. That's not something I've really thought about all that much detail yet. But if you did have multiple gateways that left the MANET, each of the gateways would have their own autonomous system number, and they would represent the MLA host routes that have affiliated themselves with those gateways. So if you had a segmentation, then you would have to stop advertising some of the host routes that are no longer in the partition that you've been segmented away from.
Okay, I will look at that and ask further questions on the mailing list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Abdul Salam.
Yes. Do you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
We hear you.
Yes. Abdul Salam Baryoun, Tikana company. I'm interested in these drafts, and I think they are important for this working group. And I think it's a need. It's not only interesting for this group. Actually, this group, our working group, has been for long not having discussed these problems or these problems, which I think Fred very much he outlined it and discussed it very well. And we need to make more discussions in this working group. So I hope also that our working group chairs read the documents and comment on it. If we have now these drafts and we don't get comments from the working group chairs, then why we should have a working group from the beginning? It's not. I didn't expect that from our working group chairs, and also I will hope that the authors of these documents to bring 2 or 3 other interesting from their country. You know, if I have a draft and I don't have any discussions, I need to bring, let's say, colleagues from the same city or same field or other companies. We have to do some work on this. Otherwise, then why we have a working group then? So I hope that we work on these challenges for these 3 drafts. Actually, before they were working on this MANET working group was working on the routing protocols only. They don't go for the MANET or the internet working for MANET, and MANET should be the main problem or the challenge that they should discuss is these 3 drafts or the drafts which are mainly on the networking, and then we go for routing. Or we do both. but or just talking only about the routing protocol and forgetting the inter-networking, that's not the right path, I think. Thank you very much.
Okay, 2 comments. Inter-networking is routing as well. And it's not only the chairs that should read drafts and comment on them. It's the whole working group. So what you were saying is just as valid for every working group participant as it is for the chairs. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the
Okay.
time slot.
Yes, and thank you for the presentations and the drafts. All right. Get the next presentation up. Ronald, you're driving.
Yeah, but I get some strange error message. It says all slots for the media are already taken.
Let me see.
Okay, maybe.
Ronald, I just closed the slide deck, so maybe that frees it up.
I can.
No, it doesn't.
Here, I'll share it. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. And I just have to remember how to give Christopher. Go ahead, Christopher.
I wouldn't bother giving me control. All I will say is all I need to say on this slide. I don't know how to drive that. Oh, hang on. Yes, I can. Yes, I do. So all I need to say on the first slide is this is draft 3, but there's the only difference between draft 1 and draft 3 is I changed my email address. Draft 0 to draft 1, there was a change in presentation, but not in technical content. Right. So this is the one slide. Look, I gave a presentation of this draft. I can't remember if it was at the 0 or 1 stage back. I can't remember which IETF it was, 120 something. So this is just meant to be a reminder summary of what's there. And it's a fairly simple draft anyway, so one slide will cover it. And as was said in the chair slide at the beginning, it's probably time to consider. It's time to consider whether or not this should be adopted as a working group draft or thanks but no thanks. So OLSR v2 is a proactive protocol, and the easiest mode of use of it is with regular heartbeat messages for hellos and TCs, possibly jittered, but that's
we lost your audio, Christopher.
Am I back?
Still here? Yeah, yes. You're back now.
Sorry, how far back do I have to rewind?
You were on the extra TC message.
Right. Okay. So it's OLSR v2 designed to be responsive in terms of sending messages not just on the regular schedule, but in response to in response to circumstances. So that's what we mean by responsive. You can consider a purely responsive use of OSR. In practice, nobody's ever going to do that. It relies on reliable messages and things like that. Nevertheless, it's a useful case to consider because it shows you where there are issues that you then might want to address anyway. And in a purely responsive network, there's a problem that when a new router pops up, it will never find out about distant old routers because they've got no reason to send their messages. Nothing in their neighborhood changed for them. But you can get around that by sending an extra TC message when that remote router, it will discover the new router's popped up because a new entry will appear in its topology information base. Therefore, it could send a responsive TC message, and that would make the protocol work in the limiting case. Otherwise, it doesn't work. In the less than limiting case, where you're wanting to do things responsively, and maybe things are changing slowly, so you can send your heartbeat messages less often, that message is still useful. It accelerates convergence, and therefore it's worth considering adding to the protocol. And it's safe to add to the protocol because it would be purely optional, because of course people might not have implemented this hypothetical RFC, but it still works without it. It's only optional. It's fully backward compatible. Routers using it and not using it will interwork, and therefore it's a potentially useful in certain circumstances, a small, very focused addition to the protocol. And that's my summary of what this thing is about. Therefore, saying this could be a useful addition offered as a working group item. How do I give you back control of the slides? Do I just I presume I just click that. Hello?
Hi.
Yeah.
I put myself in the queue, and I was the first one to do so. But actually, I would like to let other people speak first. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good piece of work. We do have to check with our AD if we could accept this. This is definitely within the charter, and it looks like to me, it looks like a fairly simple, small draft. So we'll see what we can do. But if there's any comments on the list, I'd solicit anybody else to make comments. Did you have, Christopher, have you had comments on the list before from people?
There was a couple of comments from, sorry, apologies for getting the name, what was part of the motivation for changing from 00 to 01 in terms of focusing the presentation, because they picked up too much on the idea of actually using it purely responsively, which wasn't really, I mean, there's an appendix saying, look, this is how you would do it if you could, but it has all these issues like leaving reliable messages and so on. So that is there, but stuck in an appendix, if I remember correctly. But other than that, which was useful, other than that, I don't think there's been any comments.
Okay, thank you.
The other comments on
Hi, this is Fred. I'm on now. Christopher, is there a plan in place to implement this in some OLSR v2 implementation?
I wish I could. When I was working for BAE Systems, we had an implementation of OLSR v2 of absolutely every detail. It was intended. It was developed in parallel with actually developing the protocol. I no longer work for BAE Systems. I'm retired, so I don't have access to that. I have made very tentative sort of moves towards them, but without much to offer, saying, look, could I have a license to use the software? And I would put this into it and then they'd have a copy of that. But so far that hasn't met any things. If this gets adopted as a working group item, I will push that again, because that will give me an extra little fillet to extra little tidbit. But even if that happened, that would not be a public implementation. The best it would be somebody, me, saying, yeah, it can be implemented. But I don't hold out a great deal of probability of success of that approach. You know, give it 10%. So, but
Okay.
that's I'm afraid the best I can do.
Okay. Just as a matter of awareness, we've got a very strong interest in experimenting with MANET protocols right now, but we cannot find a public domain version of OLSR v2. I know I can get Babel from a public domain. So I don't know whether you know of any public domain OLSR v2 implementations that can be used for experimentation purposes.
I thought the people you need to ask are, you could check with Justin Dean and his people. I don't know whether they had one, and I thought that the Freifunk network people were using one, which I've never myself played with, and I'm afraid my former employers failed to see any advantages in making the implementation they had publicly available. I don't think they've made. I don't think they have gained a great deal of advantage from not doing so either. But that's up to them. I have no influence there. So yes, I mean, I suspect the biggest problem with me wanting to get a copy of it is the amount of commercial work in writing a draft. Terms and conditions for me would be something they'd say, well, yes, that's actually costing us effort. But I will try if this gets adopted again. That's all I can say.
Okay, thank you.
So I can first address that question. Henning Rogge has implemented OLSR v2 twice now. His old implementation is still on GitHub, and I can publish a link to the mailing list. I'm using that, and I have been using that quite a bit. Also because it has a router-side implementation of DLAB as well, that you can add as an option. And then he did another closed source implementation in Golang, which I think can be, well, you can obtain a license for that if you get into contact with his employer, Fraunhofer FKEI, IE, sorry. So there is at least one no longer well-maintained implementation out there as open source.
Ronald, I was aware of that implementation, and I've actually pulled it down from GitHub, but it does not build. It's not maintained anymore. And I tried talking to Henry Rogge about it and did not get support from him on that.
Oh, funny. Yeah, I confess to not having checked the very latest situation, but about a year ago I was still able to build it with some tweaking.
The latest 3 months ago, there are some updates that say make it build. I don't know if you've looked at it recently, but perhaps it's fixed or perhaps it still hasn't broken.
I'll take another look. Thank you, Don.
Then about Christopher's draft, I read it. I like it. It is a bit of a niche. application, I think. You wouldn't want to use it in a very highly dynamic MANET environment, I would not think. As a non-native speaker, I'm a bit confused on responsive versus reactive, but that's my my personal problem, I guess. It has nothing to do with the draft. And yeah, if you go for the fully responsive thing, then indeed the presence of packet loss would make that difficult to use it. Abdul Salam?
Yes, regarding this draft, it's okay, but I'm not interested in adopting until we update or I hope the authors bring up all the updates for 7181. Actually, it's more than 10 years now it was issued, this RFC or the OSR version 2. So more than 10 years, and we have many updates. You know, if we go through the updates, it's difficult to bring up all, and it's important that these updates they become in one document. You know, if you go for it, it's important routing protocol for our working group, and more than 10 years. And now we're getting one draft, which is an update, which is it's a small issue, you know. So it's a case study. So it can be. It's better that we get a draft which brings up all the updates and includes this. Then it will be for me. I would like to adopt full updates, all the updates, and we include this update.
Christopher?
Well, I first joined the queue just to mention that, of course, there were implementations at the École Polytechnique, Thomas Clausen and colleagues. Since there was a PhD thesis on the basis of one of them, there was certainly more than one implementation. But I don't know whether anything was ever made public there, and I don't think Thomas is retaining much interest in this group anymore. But you know, there's someone to approach there. With regards to the last comment, routing protocols in multiple documents across it is the IETF way. I mean, you know, I don't want to compare OSR too much with OSPF, but you look how many documents you have to implement OSPF, which I have done, and well, partially done. Yes, it could all be put together in one document if somebody was prepared to do that, and that somebody isn't me unless somebody's paying me, I'm afraid, which is not going to happen. So I'm afraid that is the state of the world. Yes, one document would be nice, but I don't see it happening.
Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring up? Abdul Salam?
I'm sorry that at the beginning of the meeting I haven't listened to it. I had another thing, but is the charter of our working group going to be renewed, or have you discussed this in the beginning of this meeting?
We did mention that there was, we previously had talked about it, but the AD, Jim Gouchard, had said that we wanted to get the items that were on our charter through first before we discussed, and the number of people and the amount of interest in the group hasn't been very high. So in past discussions with them, it's been that we don't really have enough people to do that. So the current charter is all we have right now.
Yeah, Don, I'm interested that we continue in this working group with discussions. So, what's your suggestion for us? How can we make it work? I have about maybe 100 students. Is it good that I bring up 2 or 5 students? And I think all of us, we can bring some people to discuss together, and we have discussion. It's not difficult. Or do you think it's difficult? Because I want to discuss this. If we don't have, once the AD said, I think you know that, we need discussions. Okay, discussions needs people. People, we can do it, I think, or we cannot. Let's discuss this also. Is it a problem to have people discussing in this working group? Could I ask this question, please?
Well, I mean, certainly on topic and discussions on the mailing list are certainly welcome. We just have not had that amount of traffic or that amount of things, and we have had the comment that because we don't have a number of people, there are other people that have had contributions that they have not considered putting forward because they don't think it's going to get through. So it's a chicken and egg problem, really. But we do have a couple of good drafts in the queue here that are on charter, and we'll endeavor to get those through. But we really don't have a big push right now. So anything you can contribute. I mean, a draft is the most useful way to get things started.
But I think the thing is that if I'm going to write a draft, or let's say any author is going to write a draft, he will not bring it to this working group because there is no discussion. So why he will bring it here? So our problem is not a draft; it's the discussion issue, or reading the documents and replying on each draft. So let's say now we have we have 4 present or 2 presenting persons today, and we don't get much comments on this working group on the mailing list, and we have already, let's say I'm included, a member or a participant, so we could have discussed this. I hope that this comment that I'm giving now will encourage us also that we all have to give some time, and please that we hopefully at least give comments on each draft, even once a month at least. Once a month is okay, I think. So I'm sorry for my input. This input, maybe it's a little disappointing, but I am encouraged. I would like us to continue. That's my purpose. Thanks.
Thank you.
I just want to second that. I agree with what Abdussalam just said, and I think that somehow the working group has got a pall cast over it that people are afraid to post to the working group. That's what the mailing list discussion is there for, is to discuss on the mailing list. So I don't know how the social norm got to be in place that people don't say anything on the list, but that should change. I think there's enough materials out there now that are available for comment that people shouldn't feel like there's some gag order on being able to post to the list.
Yeah, well, we've always asked for comments on the list as far as we've been doing. I think, the request has been there. It's been the community that hasn't either had the time or the interest to respond. But please, if you know somebody or if you're listening now and you want to comment, please feel free to comment.
Yes, I guess you're right, Don. It's not so much that there is some gag order in place. I don't think that is true in any sense. It's just people not having the time or not willing to disclose what they're working on an IETF mailing list. And in particular, in the case of DLab, I know that there is activity out there, and I've been trying to persuade people to bring that to the IETF, but so far without much success.
Okay, if there's, I don't see anything else in the queue. Anything else? I'd like to thank everybody for attending, and we'll close on that. And please take your comments to the list. I know I have a action item to get a few messages, and I will comment on the drafts as a participant as well. So please don't be shy on the list if you're listening and you've got interest in this. And for me, thank you.
Thanks for driving the meeting, Don.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So see people in Vienna.
For sure, in
Yes.
person.
All right.
I missed the end.